by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right, we are back on the post-game show with the show we've been waiting for all year. Jamie Drysdale gets his NHL debut. Trevor Zegras gets his first NHL goal, assisted by Jamie Drysdale. And not only does Jamie Drysdale make his NHL debut, he tops it off with his first NHL goal and a 2-point night. Man, you look back over the last couple seasons, when have we ever been this happy as Ducks fans over the last couple of years? This has been, by far, I think, in at least recent memory, the most exciting game we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I think there have definitely been some highlights over the last couple of years, some moments that pop. Even this season, with Lundstrom's hat trick, right? That was a great night, I think. But I think the thing that's special about tonight is, fair or not, we've been, kind of attaching our hopes for the years to come to these two kids. These are the two, especially based on, some of Bob Murray's comments over the last year and a half. These have kind of been the two that we really are just like, okay, this is all right. And to see both of them, kind of deliver in the same night. And, I know Zegras has been playing well regardless of not scoring a goal, but to see him get the goal it's big, and, it was just a blast to watch tonight. It was a lot of fun.
It's big because both of them, right? Like, it's a culmination of so many things tonight. Like, already it was a big night because Jamie Drysdale is making his NHL debut.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we joked at the beginning of before the game tonight on Twitter and said, the only thing that tops this night is if Trevor Zegras gets his first NHL goal assisted by Jamie Drysdale. And that eventually does happen, but it comes after Jamie Drysdale picks up his first NHL goal, with it not even without some drama there, because we thought it was Max Jones for a little bit, and then it ends up getting changed to Jamie Drysdale. But yeah, I mean, the fact that so many things kind of went right for Ducks fans in this game. Like I said, the debut of the 6th overall pick from last year, Jamie Drysdale, he gets his first goal, picks up a 2-point night. Trevor Zegras breaks the Duck. He's got a little 2-game point streak going because he had an assist in the last game. Like, this is what we've been waiting for all season. Since Zieglers came up, we've been waiting for that first goal, and he's come close so many times. He hit the post last game. You felt like it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the relief on his face when he scores. We've got the GIF up on the stream right now of his celebration. Monkey off the back there, and then you mentioned to me before the show tonight the kind of intermission presser that he had. You could just you could tell how relieved he was to get that one.
He was hyped, man. He was like vibrating. He was so excited. It was so funny to see. It was just wonderful, man. And he gets to play with his boy. We kind of heard from when they were both with the Gulls that they had gotten kind of close, and they had the whole World Juniors Championship thing, and it was cool, to see the two of them really kind of go off and kind of make the night theirs. And I think, to your point about, this is kind of what we've been waiting to see. I think this night, not to, make a mountain out of a molehill or anything, but I think this night is a pretty good kind of idea of what we had hoped to get out of this year. And I think, the best version of what it is Bob Murray was telling himself going into the season, which is that we saw two kids make plays and put the team in a position to win a game. And then the veterans came in. Ryan Miller had a great night. They went with the all-veteran power play at the end, and they get the goal. And Henrique gets the goal. And so it's kind of exactly that recipe, which is the kids do, enough during a game to keep them in it. And then you have the veterans to, step in and kind of help give the whole team that extra push and that extra presence. And so, like I said, I don't want to make too much out of it, but I do think it was very interesting that in their first game, and they both, score, that we also see then the veterans kind of do their part and finish it off.
Yeah, we see Getzlaf get his 700th career assist in the same game. Then Zegras and Drysdale get their first NHL goals, and then obviously, like you said, Henry getting the power play goal, and it was a veteran lineup out there to win the game in overtime. It's just kind of a cool game to get in. It's funny how quickly the emotions change, right? We go from just a horrific loss to the Avalanche 2 days ago. We were up 4-2 in the first. You end up losing 8-4, and it felt like rock bottom. We had, I think Eric Stevens tweeted out, or somebody did, saying like, "Is this rock bottom for the Ducks in franchise history? Like, is this the worst it can get?" And you can talk to any Ducks fan tonight, and nobody knows or nobody remembers right now that the Ducks are where they are in the standings and just came off an 8-4 loss. Like I don't think you can find an unhappy Ducks fan anywhere right now, just because this is what we've been waiting for in terms of some progress and some sign that the future is bright for Ducks fans and for the organization. Because obviously there's a lot of things that we've been talking about all year, the negatives, the downside of this season, some of the kids not being able to step up. I think before this game, one of the headliners we were going to talk about tonight was Sam Steele being scratched for a third straight game, and it now doesn't, at least for the time being, doesn't feel like any of that matters, right? It really, it's all kind of put to the side, at least for now, and I think that's deservedly so, right? Ducks fans deserve this game and this feeling at least once in a year, especially this year. This has been a somber year. Luckily, it is a short 52 game or 56 game season where you don't have to suffer through too many of those losses. You get these kind of moments in a down year like that, and that's kind of what you wait for, right? Is to have these bright spots that come up every now and then.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think we've seen Zegras, right? He's played a few games up, and so we've been able to kind of get ourselves accustomed to the level of special he is. And that's not to say that anybody's jaded, because it still stands out so clearly with what he does. But then having Drysdale come in and play like this was wonderful. I mean, even if he doesn't score tonight, does anybody think he doesn't look doesn't look NHL ready? I mean, the stuff he did without the puck on his stick was remarkable. Like, he really did. He found a great, I'm kind of stepping over myself, but he found a lot of ways to use his skating to make up for the fact that he's not the biggest, strongest guy on the ice, right? He plays so well on the, like with his stick, it just felt like he had an active stick, but it was clean and it was, precise, and it was aggressive with intent is what I think I mean to say. He, made a number of plays by just getting the puck off somebody's stick, and he didn't even have to do anything really beyond that. It was wonderful. I think, I said during the game, like, are we 100% sure, even with a fully healthy roster, he's not the third best defenseman on the team? Like,
yeah, and
he just looked phenomenal tonight.
It's early, but it's hard to not think that right now, right? It's almost as perfect as an NHL debut you could have as an 18-year-old defenseman in this league, where no mistakes or no evident, really obvious mistakes. The skating is the big part of his game and the hallmark of his game, and it was on full display. Great playmaking, picks up a secondary assist, and then the big thing I think on his goal is just the ability to walk the line. Like, how many guys on this Ducks blue line can do that the way Jamie Drysdale did that, and then get a clean shot on net, right? Like, I think we've seen Shattenkirk do that on occasion. Cam Fowler can do that, but then also add in the fact that you get a clean shot on net through a screen, and Max Jones is where he needs to be. He's blocking out the sun in front of the net, and Jamie Drysdale does what he needs to do, and he gets a shot on net, and you can't ask for any more. And the Erie Otters are watching this, and I'm sure they're slightly proud, but also slightly afraid that this means they might not get him back for the OHL season. And it's probably the perfect time for the Ducks to throw him in here and see what they have, because it's hard to sit here after this game, and yeah, it's only one game, but to sit here and say that he's going to go back to the OHL right now, it feels like it's a bit further off from that than it was before this game. And, it's not to say he's going to come in every game and put up a multi-point effort and look as good as he did, but, outside of the points, like you said, he just looked so confident out there. He looked like the Ducks' best defenseman by far. He played 18 minutes tonight. He did have a bit of a sheltered game, but I think as much as we've criticized Dallas Eakins and the coaching staff for mishandling Trevor Zegras in his minutes and kind of how they deploy him, I think they deployed Jamie Drysdale perfectly for an 18-year-old defenseman in his NHL debut. He through just over 18 minutes, he had one defensive zone start. He got put in offensive zone situations to really kind of excel off his skill set. And then the one thing you kind of thought before the game is which power play is he going to go on? Was he going to be power play 1? Was he going to go on power play 2? And they end up putting him on the first power play unit. They didn't take Shattenkirk off. They just went with 2 defensemen, and that really shows the confidence that they have in him to be that guy. And it really shows a big difference from what they've done with Zegras. And, Zegras is a skilled enough player that even if he only plays 11 minutes tonight like he did, he ends up scoring a goal and looking great no matter what. So it kind of pushes that to the side a little bit here where, they've mishandled Zegras, and we've been critical of the coaching staff for doing so. But I'll give them full credit tonight for the way they handled Jamie Drysdale. I thought it was a perfect execution.
Yeah, no, I mean... I would push back a little bit on mishandled. I think they have been overly conservative and overly cautious. But I don't think they've mishandled him. Personally, you know what I mean? I don't want to speak for anybody else, but like for me, I definitely think they have been overly cautious, and he has played himself into position to be trusted more. But I don't think they've done anything to tank his confidence or jerk him around or anything like that. I think they've just treated him like a young, exciting offensive prospect, and that's how they go with it. But the thing for me is Drysdale played 16 minutes at even strength, so that's huge, and he never looked uncomfortable. I think it should be noted that he played, it's one game against a borderline playoff team, if you want to be nice.
Don't do this. Come on. We can't do this.
No. What I'm saying is, if you want to look at it in any kind of way, like I think that's all fine and well to like temper your expectations and not get ahead of yourself, because it's his first game. There's gonna be ups and downs along the journey. But what you saw tonight is the kind of player that he can be, and the kind of impact that he can do. And as he gets older and as he learns the NHL game more, there's no reason to not be incredibly excited about this. And, the dynamic that he can bring to this team. Like you said, I don't think there's anybody on the team, except for maybe Zegras himself, who can walk the line like that. And to see him get off such a good shot so quick, there was so much about his game tonight that I was so happy with, that I just think it was a wonderful sign.
Yeah, and let's break down those goals, because I think out of anything tonight, we don't need to talk about the first period and how Arizona started. It really is about the 2 goals tonight. And again, looking at this Jamie Drysdale goal and talking about him walking the line, he does a couple pump fakes that he's gonna end up shooting the puck, and he waits and he waits and he waits and he waits for a 2-player screen, which I think is speaks volumes of his ability to walk the line and his hockey sense as an offensive defenseman, where he's got the forward who's pressing him, and he waits until Goligoski moves into kind of a linear position with the forward so that he's got a 2-person screen, and then he shoots the puck. And Max Jones is there, not really blocking the goaltender, but there for any potential deflection if the puck's going wide. And, again, it just speaks volumes to Drysdale's ability and his hockey sense on this play, that he has the confidence as an 18-year-old in his NHL debut to make that play. And again, that just shows you the level, the way, the level he thinks the game at already, and why he looks so comfortable, right? Like, who cares? In the modern NHL, you don't really need to be a big guy on the blue line to succeed. You need to have great skating, and you need to think the game one step ahead of your opponent. And Jamie Drysdale has that already. And, again, it is one game, and we all hyped up and excited tonight, but it is for a good reason, because it's not like he threw a puck on net and it took, 3 bounces and went in, or, a Sam Steele type goal where, the other night where it went in off his foot. it is a great individual play here, and one you expect every kind of high-end NHL defenseman, young NHL defenseman, to be able to execute. And for him to be already doing that, I think is what gets Ducks fans really excited. And everybody's ready now to watch the next game. And we know he's going to be in the lineup. There's no way he gets out of the lineup after this.
Yeah, you definitely hope not. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of stick from the chat right now, but I really don't mean to be a joy kill. I was so happy with everything that happened. I think the thing, that separates great players from good players is being able to leverage your strengths to, make up for whatever deficit you may have, right? And we saw that tonight with Drysdale. Like you said, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but it didn't matter because he was so confident, he was so poised, he was able to read the plays really well, and he used his elite skating, which is what we heard about him going into the draft and what we were told coming out about him, that even if he didn't hit his ceiling, right, as maybe a 50, 60-point defenseman, his skating was going to make him an NHL caliber player regardless. And tonight what you saw is he used that skating to make plays in both zones. And it's huge. And yeah, he showed a bunch of poise on that power play. He was buzzing around. I think a little bit before his goal, he was pressing down on the right side and ended up having to do a full loop back up to, all the way up to the point. But he was he was mentally and physically engaged in the game in a way that was really exciting to see. And, you really hope he doesn't end up back in Erie.
Yeah.
And that this coaching staff really does give him the opportunity to stick around for a while, because he seems clearly to be ready from a skill level.
Yeah, I'll preface it with, it's not the end of the world if he goes back to Erie. It's not the worst thing.
Yes, it is. That's not, you're not allowed to say that. He's him and Zegras are the only hope we have these days.
Would I love for him to stick around and be here for the rest of the season? 100%. Not even just based off that game, just based off, look at the Ducks blue line right now. Can he do a better job than Hutton, Larson, Hakanpää? I think there's no question he can. And he makes this team better in the lineup, even without, a goal and assist here. But I think you can't even just take this one NHL game into account. He's played 14 games with San Diego and has 10 points. So it's not like he, was bad there, had a great NHL debut, and that's it. He's shown he can play against pros in the AHL level and do really well. He was Rookie of the Month for February, and then comes into his first NHL game and does this. And it's hard to take both of those into account, because we can sit here and say, oh, it's a small sample size, it's one NHL game. When you take into the AHL stretch he's had here over the last month and a bit, and add that into the mixture with this NHL debut, I don't know how you can make an argument for sending him back. You could say, yeah, he's 18 and whatever. Before the season, you thought he should probably get some time in the OHL. And Erie will be probably lobbying a bit to have him back and make their team better. But, it's not like the Ducks have, 5 or 6 defensemen that are clearly better than him right now. It's hard to really put too many guys in front of him. I think just based on, experience and longevity with the team, nobody's really unseating Lindholm or Fowler. Lindholm's obviously out, but Fowler, Lindholm, Manson, if he comes back, they're not, in the sense, they're not getting scratched, right? They're not getting taken out of the lineup. That's for Jamie Drysdale, and Shattenkirk's probably in that mix too, but that's 4 guys. Those remaining 2 spots, there's no question. I think he's better than Larson. He's better than Hutton. He's better than Hakanpää. And as much as I love Josh Mahura, I would have liked to see him in the lineup tonight. He's showing he's potentially better than Josh Mahura. He outproduced him at the AHL level and came in and looked like a dynamic player. And that's not a jab at Josh Mahura. That just tells you the quality of player that the Jamie Drysdale is.
No, yeah, exactly right. I don't think it, because I don't think any of us have sat here and been upset with Mahura's play. He's a young defenseman. In a very weird situation on a team in a weird spot, and he's played well. He's done what they've asked him to do. He's looked, as comfortable and as confident as maybe you expect from someone who's been up and down the last few years. But Drysdale coming in and being better isn't a slight to him. It's a testament to Drysdale. And it's wonderful. I think you actually kind of hit on something that I was thinking about watching this game. Like, if everyone is healthy, what six defensemen are you putting on out every night?
Yeah, I think there's an obvious six for me. When you have Lindholm, Manson, Fowler, Shattenkirk, and Mahura and Drysdale, you could debate, Josh Mahura if you want, and maybe put in Hakanpää if you want, a bit of a different presence there. But I think Hakanpää serves a purpose as a seventh defenseman that if you are coming up against a more physical side and you want that presence back there, which is still a thing. Like, listen, Hakanpää has not been good lately. Outside the first week of the season with Cam Fowler, he hasn't been that great. But I can understand putting him in the lineup for certain games if you want to go with that approach. It's a bit more of an old school approach of having that physical guy and swapping him in. So I don't mind him hanging around there. But Jacob Larson hasn't been good, and Ben Hutton hasn't been an excellent addition. He looked good tonight, but he was also playing with Jamie Drysdale, and he was getting sheltered minutes of his own tonight, right?
Right.
So outside the PK, he only had the
Yeah.
one defensive zone start too. So, I think we've all been waiting to see a Josh Mahura, Jamie Drysdale pairing in the AHL and now in the NHL. And that might be a little bit too much chaos in terms of both guys pinching up the ice, and maybe that's where a guy like Larson or Hutton checks in just to kind of pull the reins back a little bit. But that top five, I think, with Drysdale in there now is pretty set, and you can kind of rotate in and out who you want between Hutton, Larson, and Hakanpää on that bottom pairing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think the thing with Hakanpää recently has been that the limits of his ability have been a little strained, right? He's not a great skater, but he's pretty smart for a guy who isn't the most mobile, and he makes up for that with that and, his size. And he uses his size well. He's big, he's physical, he moves guys around. There's a reason he wasn't in the NHL before, and you see that sometimes when he gets caught out of play, out of position on, what do you call it? On like the penalty kill and stuff. Like, it just happens. A good power play is supposed to force penalty killers to make mistakes, and that happens sometimes. But I think at this point, I would be hard pressed to say that Lindholm, Fowler, Shattenkirk, Manson, Drysdale, and Mahura aren't the six guys that should be out there every night. And I think the interesting thing about that is you can pretty much, even if you keep left and right the same, you can do so many different things with those six defensemen as far as creating pairs that, you could almost have a top six that's actually a top six and not, a top four and two guys that we lump in with. I think you could really put out three incredibly competent and successful pairs if those are your six defensemen. And yeah, Hutton or Hakanpää is a perfectly fine seventh guy. Give somebody a break, somebody gets banged up, something like that. Things happen. Depth is important. But, on a nightly basis going forward, and this year I think can kind of be thrown out the window just because there's quite a few questions about what they're going to do with anybody, right? But I think starting next year, I have a hard time thinking those aren't the six guys that should be in the opening night lineup unless somebody does something really special in the meantime. I just think it's a really exciting time right now for Ducks fans. I think what we saw tonight is so much of what we have been waiting to see for the last 3 or 4 years, which is some positive from the future or for the future. What is the way out of what has just not been fun for the last couple years? And you saw it tonight. You saw two young players who look like they have the potential to be stars. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's just so wonderful. And we haven't had players like that in a long time. Offensive difference makers that aren't 33 is just so nice. And there's plenty of other players in the pipeline that can come in and fill roles and fill different needs. And, the Sam Steele thing is interesting, but it's not the most important thing right now.
Yeah.
And, I just think there's a lot to be excited for going forward, regardless of what happens the rest of the season, barring something beyond catastrophic or stupid. There's just so much to be excited for that this is kind of a high we can ride for a while.
Yeah, and when we were looking at this young group of kids coming up, the thing that we always kind of drew back to was they're missing 1, 2, 3 star players, really high caliber prospects to come in and make a difference and elevate the game of guys like Troy Terry and Max Jones and Maxime Comtois and Sam Steele. And you look at Trevor Zegras' goal. It's a great pass from Troy Terry, who's looked excellent over the last couple games, and he seems to really have an understanding of playing with Trevor Zegras. And if you give Trevor Zegras the puck in that area, he hits the post last game on a one-on-one with the goaltender. He makes no mistake this time. Doesn't go to the backhand, pulls it, toe drags around the goaltender and just scoops it up over Aiden Hill. That's the dynamic ability that Trevor Zegras has, is that if you give him that opportunity, if he misses once, he's going to make you pay the second time. And he's elevated the game of the guys he's played with. Adam Henrique has looked revived playing, just being back in the lineup, but also playing with Trevor Zegras. And I really, really like how Troy Terry's looked over the last couple games. And I will eat my words there. And, I've been very critical of Troy Terry over the last little bit here. And this, kind of couple weeks or month that he's had where he's really taken a step forward here and taken advantage of the opportunities he's been given, that, this is arguably the Ducks' best line right now with Zegras, Henrique, and Troy Terry. And I know we flip through that a lot this year. We say, oh, this is the best line and this is the best line. But it really looks like a line that could get going here for the rest of the season. It can continue to be the Ducks' most dynamic line offensively. And it all kind of begins and ends with the creativity and the offensive ability of Trevor Zegras. And watch out. He's got his first now, and the last thing this kid needs, if you're an opposition player, is more confidence and
Right.
The monkey off his back. And as excited as I am to see him get that goal in this game, I'm just as excited to see him in the next game and see what he can do. And that's a player that we haven't had in Anaheim for I don't know how long. A guy you're excited to watch the next game for. Where Ryan Getzlaf is a great player. Corey Perry's a great player. But I don't want to say were we ever excited to watch them play, because we were, but have you ever been this excited about just the potential for this guy to just do things you don't see that often in the NHL from a player his age, right? That is something I think Ducks fans haven't had for a while. Look at Minnesota right now. They have almost never had that since Marian Gaborik, and now they have Kirill Kaprizov, and every game is an exciting game for a Wilds fan to get out there and just watch him play, whether they win or lose. Just being able to watch him play and do things they haven't seen a player of theirs do for a long time, and Trevor Zegras is that guy right now. And I'm more than excited to see what he can do in the next game. It's another game against the Coyotes, and I'm sure he's feeling it right now, so it's going to be exciting to see what he can do.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's interesting. As much as I can be critical of him, I would say the last time there was a player with the type of skill that made you excited, was Bobby Ryan. But I think that was a much more different type of skill. He used his body and his wingspan and his stick, and he always did that thing where he'd go down the left wing and he'd just hold the puck 30 feet from his body on the end of his 25-foot stick, and make a hard cut in and things like that. And I think that was all fun. And even Getzlaf and Perry, man, like, they were great to watch, especially when they were younger. And they still had the legs under them, and they were just incredible, and they could just control the tone of a game for 25 minutes a night if they wanted to. Like, they were incredible, and they were physical presences, and they were great. But the stuff that Zegras tries is just so light. Like, there's just such a levity to the way that he plays the game. He's so excited to be out there every night, and it's so nice to have someone like that on this team. I think you really do kind of have to go back to Korea and Solani as far as having guys that are having that kind of skill and speed combination in a way that is video game-esque, Sports Center-esque, right? Those highlight level plays that you can take someone who's never watched a hockey game and show them this and be like, which one of these guys is special? And they're like, oh yeah, that guy right there, he's very special. You can just see it. And I think that's just a wonderful thing to have going forward. And I think there's a lot of, players in the pipeline to be excited about. But even if this is it for right now, it's just these two guys for the rest of the year. Damn, man, I'm stoked. I'm so happy to get to watch games now, just because of the way they play and how smart they are and how unscared of the moment they are. I think that's, for me, the thing that stands out. It's just there's a fearlessness to them that isn't reckless. It's just confident. And they're just like, no, man, I'm a good player. Like, I got taken where I got taken in the draft for a reason. I'm here for a reason. So I'm going to play my game, and I'm going to do the best that I can, and we're going to go from there. And they look fantastic. Like I said, it's going to be a long year for them. And even over the next year or two, there's going to be ups and downs and all sorts of crap like that. But I think this is the first time there has felt like a tangible way out of the basement, basically, for the last 3-4 years.
You would have to think, like, I'm not kind of invested in the Ottawa Senators, but you'd have to kind of think that this is what their fan base feels like right now. They're a bad team, but they're watching Tim Stützle come into the lineup and play great. They're watching a young defenseman in Thomas Chabot really take a step forward. They've got Drake Batherson, who, is unbelievable this year. And they're not a good team. And they're losing a lot of games, just as much as the Ducks are. But there's a sense of optimism there that hasn't been there in years past when you look at the fact that they had to trade franchise players like Mark Stone and Erik Karlsson. And, the Ducks are essentially in the same boat there, moving from an old guard into a younger core here and having these players on a nightly basis to watch. It's like if you said at the beginning of the show, if we'd have lost this game, I don't think anybody's really walking away from this upset. I mean, maybe,
yeah, but
yeah, like it's a nice cherry on top that the Ducks won this game and they won it in overtime, and they can celebrate getting their first NHL goals in a win, which is nice. But if they had lost this in overtime or lost in regulation, at the end of the day, we're all still happy because it was first NHL goals for our top two prospects in a great game for the young kids, right? Like that at the end of the day is kind of the big thing here. And I think, when you look at Trevor Zegras, he's got 1 goal and 3 assists in 11 games. It's not essentially lighting the world on fire, but he's looked great in all those games. And you just kind of feel like he probably deserves a few more points at this point. He's made some great passes that a few guys have missed on. He hit the post in another game. He's missed a few chances. Like, he could be kind of a bit closer to a point per game right now. And I think that's another thing where, when you take out just looking at the point totals right now and in the amount of games he's played, he looks a lot better than that kind of, the story that tells. One question I want to get here too, because Shane asked it in the chat, and it kind of refers to Drysdale on whether the Ducks have to send him back to the OHL or not. So right now with Jamie Drysdale, the Ducks have 2 options when the OHL does start up. So if the OHL season resumes, which is still in the works right now, there's still a lot of things being finalized with the Ontario government and being able to get the OHL underway safely. But if the OHL season does resume, Drysdale can't go back to the AHL because of the NHL-CHL agreement. So the Ducks' only options are to send him back down to Erie or to keep him in the NHL. They don't have to send him back down to Erie. Erie can't recall him, and the Ducks' hands are tied and they're forced. There's no situation where the Ducks aren't able to keep him around if they want to. They just get eliminated. The option of sending him down to San Diego gets eliminated once the OHL season starts up and Erie starts resuming their ability to play. So, at any point, the Ducks could keep him up for the rest of the year if they want to. You just run into that situation of burning a year off the entry-level contract, which, as much as people like to kind of focus on that as a reason to keep a guy up or not. And I think there are times where it is a big thing to focus on. If Drysdale's going to play like this, and if he continues to play like this, I think is the key thing. There is absolutely no point in sending him down to Erie, and there's nothing Erie can do about that. And junior teams, as much as I'd love to have their players back and to make a run at things, Erie is just as happy to see Drysdale succeed at the NHL level. And for him to be an alumni of their program, do well with Team Canada at the World Juniors, and then go off to have such success as an 18-year-old in the NHL, they're not going to be upset about about him going and staying with the Ducks. And it becomes a real conversation right now, where at the beginning, and we talk about how difficult this season has been, and how detrimental it is to prospects and their development and a lot of the NHL teams. We don't get this in a regular season, which is something you can look on and kind of draw some positives out of a difficult year, and a difficult year for a lot of people. Is in a regular season, 82 game season without lockdowns and closures of leagues, Jamie Drysdale's playing in Erie at the beginning of the year, and he's not up here this year. He's playing there the entire year, because once you go down to the OHL, you can't be recalled. You can't be
Right.
called up like the AHL or anything like that. So we're extremely lucky that he's able to play here, that we were able to see him in San Diego this year, that we actually get to have this moment, which is something nice to look on, especially when, like I said, it's been such a difficult year for so many people, and for sports in general. And to be able to kind of take one of the positives out of this and say that this is a moment we wouldn't have normally had without that, it's really nice to be able to see that.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're 100% right. It's definitely such a weird situation, and so I think it's nice to have this kind of positive. I think it raises an interesting question, right? Because, like you said, it's hard to think that these two would be in this position in a normal year. But maybe with a full camp and a full preseason, they are. You know what I mean? So it's hard to go backwards and kind of counterfactual your way through or whatever. But the reality of the situation is right around the time when the fan base had to have felt the lowest it's felt in a long time. These two guys kind of just come in tonight and just play incredible. And, Zegras had been doing that on his own, playing really well. And like you said, there were a number of plays that either he gets lucky, a little luck on the post or something like that, or another guy finishes. He's probably got 4 or 5 more points at least in this season. He's been that good and that creative. But even without that, it's just been wonderful, to see the impact he has. But having two of those guys on the ice, I think, makes a difference, because two feels like, it's gonna sound really stupid, but like two feels closer to a team than one does. You know what I mean? Because that's kind of always the thing. It's like, okay, we have this guy, but where are we going to bring in the help for him? And you can't just bring in middle six help. You have to bring in elite help. You have to bring in other guys who can, be in the conversation for who's the best player on the team. Like, you need those caliber of players to really push a team into legitimate contention. As important as depth is, elite skill is fundamental to a successful team. And so I just think this is great. And you mentioned it earlier, and it kind of came in and out of my brain, but I think the thing that was fun for me is they showed a clip of Zegras sitting on the bench after his goal, and he's got this big smile on his face, and he's looking at somebody, and he's just kind of laughing. And then you see Getzlaf skate in and, rub his head a little bit. And it's just so nice to see that kind of handoff. You know what I mean? And it's just so cool. Like, I just think there's a lot of things to be excited about. And as much as the situation has been hard, and I don't think the season sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it still is what it is. But this is a reason to be very excited going forward. And I think that's the biggest thing tonight, is that it's the first night where you really did see, because we spent a lot of time this year talking about the younger guys and where they could fit in to a team going forward once it's competitive. And what you saw tonight was the ways in which those guys can supplement these two. Having Lundestrom and Comtois and Jones and Terry be there to support Zegras and Drysdale is just wonderful. You can see the way in which all of these players can interact and create a successful team together.
And when you think the fact that the Ducks are going to add a third guy to that kind of star list, you would hope this year with a potential top 5, top 10 draft pick, it adds to the excitement. And again, like you said, it really kind of opens a light at the end of the tunnel, where you see these two guys now producing at the NHL level with the NHL roster, and then you're adding another guy. and you've got a guy like Jacob Perreault in the system who you feel pretty good about in being an impact player. You still got guys, as much as he struggled, guys like Braden Tracy. You've got Benoit Olivier-Groux in San Diego, and you've got Josh Mahura who's waiting to yeah, I had to mention him. I have to. I got to bring him up there. I can't not mention him. But you've got all those guys, and Henry Thrun is playing in the USHL, and he looks great, and he's a defenseman you can bring up and hopefully play in your top four as a 3 or 4 eventually as well if all things go well. Jackson Lacombe was named a Big Ten All-Star player, first teamer this year because he had a great season with Minnesota, and he's a guy they took out of high school. Ian Moore has played well with the Chicago Steel after coming out of high school, and I criticize those high school picks, but they're actually panning out pretty well for the Ducks, and you're starting to kind of develop some really good young players to come up and supplement these 2 superstars you have, and hopefully a third when we look at whoever they get in the top 5 or top 10 this year. Is it's fairly exciting when you kind of look to the future here. And one guy, we were talking about the kids a ton tonight for good reason, and it was kind of the night of milestones with the kids getting their first NHL goals and Getzlaf getting his 700th assist. But we can't overlook Ryan Miller. Because not only did he pass Dominic Hasek in wins, in career wins, he played a good game, and we might be seeing a lot more of him because John Gibson got added to the injured reserve before this game, which means he's out for at least a week's worth of games here. So it's going to be Ryan Miller and Anthony Stolar. So Miller might be able to pad the stats there. And it's just such a feel-good moment, right? Like, weren't sure if he was going to come back. He came back to kind of hit those records and hit those milestones that he wanted to hit before he calls it quits on his career. And it's so nice for him to get that opportunity to do that in what's a down year for the Ducks. It's another one of those feel-good stories for him to really get that and kind of end his career on a high note for himself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? I think it's easy to forget how much uncertainty there was this summer about whether or not he was going to come back and whether he wanted to play, and if he did want to play, did he want to come to Anaheim and be on a team that felt to everybody outside of the GM's office that it wasn't going to be a contending team, and at his age and with his family, and there was a lot of questions, and ultimately he ended up coming back, and it's been huge. I think one, he's just someone everybody speaks so highly of. And he's seen so much, he went through some real wild times up and down in Buffalo. And, to have someone like that who can just come in and steady the ship when your all-star level goalie goes down is huge. And depending on what the situation with Gibson is, I almost just, on the high that we are riding tonight, want to say it would be kind of fun to bring Drysdale up and see what the spine of this team looks like for the next 5 years, or 10 years or whatever. He hasn't been great lately, but that happens. So I just think Miller passing Hasek is very cool. And I think, like I said, I really do think tonight is the blueprint for what you look at for a competent season. The young kids made enough plays to keep the game interesting and alive, and the veterans did the thing they needed to do and provided that extra level of support to push them over the top. And I just think that's the recipe you want. I have a hard time thinking you send Drysdale back. I just don't know what the motivation for that would be at this point. If you're worried about hurting his confidence, anything like that, you can always just sit him for a game. We've seen Eakins doesn't have a problem with that. But at this point, I have a hard time thinking he's, not the second or third best defender on the team already. Like, he just looks so comfortable that I think you have far more to gain by letting him and Zegras just go buck wild for the rest of the season than you do to lose.
Yeah.
So I hope,
unless he, visually struggles over the next couple of games here, I don't see any way he gets sent back or any reason to send him back. And even in that, I think you could still make the argument that it is beneficial to keep him up, even if he does have some struggles, because this is a bad team, right? There are going to be games that he's in that aren't great games for the Ducks. They're not going to be exciting 3-2 overtime wins. There's going to be some tough times, like the game on Tuesday, that he's going to be involved in. But unless he's a detriment to this team, I don't see the point in sending him back down, even if he's not having a game where he puts up a goal and an assist. If he has a quiet game, but still looks good, still looks like an NHL defenseman, then there's no reason to send him back. Like I said, we're talking about Zieglers' production, and it's 1 goal and 4 points in 11 games. But I don't think there's been a game where we've said, oh, he doesn't look ready. He doesn't. He looks like he's struggling out there. He looks like he's behind the ball. He's looked ready in every single game, and he's looked like an NHL player in every single game. But the Ducks aren't a great team, so there's going to be some struggles, and there's going to be some games where he doesn't put up points, and maybe some games where he's not as noticeable as he wants to be. But that doesn't mean that they're not NHL ready, and I think we have to kind of take the same approach with Jamie Drysdale there. There's a couple questions I want to get to in the chat before I miss them here. So the one's a little off the board here. It's from Dave. He says, should the Ducks take a flyer on Taylor Hall? At the
Yes, absolutely. Why not? Sure, say yes. Just who cares?
As much as I'd love to see Taylor Hall playing with Trevor Zegras, the assets I know Hall's a rental, and the cost is a bit lower, and you're dealing with the Sabres team that's in the same boat here. But I don't.
Are we sure the cost is that high at this point? Kevin Adams is just holding on for dear life. My God, I think we could send him Sam Steele and we might be able to get it done. It's so bad over there.
Yeah, as much as I'd love it, and I think Taylor Hall is a lot better player than what's going on this year. Even last year in his last little bit with New Jersey, he was still close to a point per game player or at a point per game player. And then obviously we remember the 93-point season he had with New Jersey. So he still is worthy of being a first overall pick like he was, and being that caliber type of player. But Anaheim can't be a destination he's too happy to go to. When you look at the fact that he's not really ever been on a competitive team. He left the Oilers to go to the Devils, then went from the Devils.
He did no. He did not leave the Oilers. He was kicked off the island in a 1-for-1 trade, the greatest Bob McKenzie tweet of all time.
It's unbelievable. I don't want to go on a Taylor Hall rant here, but I don't think I've ever seen a player of his caliber and his ability waste the prime years of his career getting shifted from bad team to bad team to bad team. Like, he goes from the Oilers to the Devils to the Coyotes to the Sabres. That is unbelievable. Like, he's never found a home on a good team. He's played with good players. He's played with some really good players, but
Who's the best player he's played with outside of this year?
Outside of Jack Eichel?
Outside of Jack Eichel, who I think takes it handily.
I can't remember. He didn't play with Connor McDavid. He went just before the Connor McDavid era, right? I'm trying to remember who everybody he played with, but he
got Hopkins.
Yeah, Nugent
Ryan
Hopkins,
Smith.
not bad. Ryan Smith, I can't believe you threw that in there.
Bill Kessel.
Clayton Keller.
I mean, is it Jacob Chikrin?
Jacob Chikrin, yeah. You know what? It's just unbelievable. Like, this guy, his next destination for himself. Maybe he can't decide where he gets traded to this year. Probably not. But as a free agent, this guy is going to a team that's going to be good. He's going to a Colorado. He's going to a Toronto.
Are we sure? Because he could have freaking done that. He could have done that a month and a half ago, and we weren't having this freaking conversation.
Is this his first time? This can't be his first time hitting UFA status, right?
It is. It's his first free agent year.
Well, yeah. Credit to Taylor Hall. He'll actually go somewhere where he can really show his ability. He'll be a guy I'll be targeting in fantasy hockey next year.
Well, it'll be his second free agency because he did choose Buffalo in free agency, so it'll be his second.
Yeah, the 1 year deal in Buffalo, right? So.
And to be honest, I don't think when it was signed, it was certainly questionable, but I think you could definitely see. You could see the reason for going there, right? Joining a team, play with Jack Eichel, see if you can help turn it around. Maybe if you're lucky, you get the Jeff Skinner deal. You get to stay there and score 30 goals a year forever, whatever. And it just hasn't worked out. And so, it's unfortunate, but That's the part about team sports, man. It's not like tennis where you're kind of on your own and you should be held responsible for how successful you are. There's 19 other guys every night that got to do something for you to be successful. And, as much as he hasn't pulled his own weight in Buffalo this year, I don't think anybody should have being bad in Buffalo held against him.
Yeah, and I should point out that Dave wasn't saying the Ducks should go after Taylor Hall. He actually mentioned that that it would be something he wouldn't do.
Take it back. Don't let the check bully. He's what he said. He said straight up, I read it. He goes, should the Ducks trade for Taylor Hall? Should we give up Trevor Zegras for Taylor Hall? No,
We'll just add a little bit on each time. I saw somebody also ask what's going on with John Gibson. All we know is it's a lower body injury and he's on the injured reserve now. So no.
He could have an ingrown toe for all we know.
He didn't leave a game injured, did he? He just all of a sudden was out for one game. It was like almost a game time decision. We found out right before the game. It's a bit weird that now he's on the injured reserve. So we'll see what comes for that for the next little bit. It's not like it affects the Ducks that much. Like, yeah, it affects their chances to win, but it's not like this is a playoff team and John Gibson being out is a nightmare for everybody. The guy could probably use the rest, to be honest to you. And Ryan Miller getting a couple more games here and potentially seeing Anthony Stolarz isn't the worst thing. And I know it's off the board here, like you said, but and Lucas Dostal's been struggling. But if the Ducks are going full youth movement here and want to give some guys a shot, wouldn't be the end of the world to give Lucas Dostal a shot in the NHL. Not that he would stick around and have a roster spot for the entire year, but if you're handing out NHL debuts right now, it would be nice to see him get one.
Yeah, just go for it. Who cares?
Yeah,
Hell, bring up Perot. I don't care. What do we have to lose?
God,
at this point, just start trading people from the bottom six and the bottom pair, and just get them.
I would have loved to see
How
Jacob
many late
Perot.
and mid-round draft picks you can get.
I wish he wasn't hurt because.
Oh, screw it.
Yeah, I wish he wasn't hurt because I'd love to see him right now. He'd be a guy that I think would fit well. Well, obviously in San Diego, but with this roster too. I know we've talked all the great things and the positive things on the show. There's one thing we have to get to, and it's the only negative we're probably going to talk about here because we only got 5 minutes left on the show. But we got to talk about Sam Steele because it's 3 games now as a healthy scratch. I think it's the longest of at least the kids where they've been, the longest period that they've been healthy scratch now. No injury, or at least no reported injury for Sam Steele. It's just an assumption right now that they're all healthy scratches just based off his play. What does this mean for him, and what is his way back into the lineup? Because if you look at the roster right now, like Comtois, Getzlaf, Raquel, there's really no way he unslots anybody there. When you look at Zieglers, Henrique, and Terry, that's staying together. The only place you can really see him come in is maybe the fourth line for Derek Grant or Danton Heinen, who've been scratched on occasion, but is putting him on the fourth line really the best thing? Maybe that's the only place for him right now. And then I guess if you look at what is listed as the second line for the Ducks, which is Jones, Lindstrom, Silfverberg, there's a potential that he slots in for Isaac Lindstrom. If the Ducks wanted to sit him, I don't think he deserves to be sat right now. The production production is something else with Isaac Lindstrom. I think he's a great player even without putting up points. He kind of fills a role that we expected from him, and when he puts up points, it's nice. But right now, Sam Steele doesn't have many options to get back into the lineup, and especially when the Ducks are winning games. They lost 8-4 and they kept the same roster. They just won 3-2 in overtime. I can imagine they go in against Arizona in this next game and have the exact same roster, and Sam Steele sits for a fourth straight game, and then you start getting speculation at that point. And I don't think he's going to get traded, and I think it's too soon to make those kinds of speculation. But you can't sit this guy forever and not play him, especially at his age. And I can't remember if he's waiver exempt. I believe he still is, so it is an option if you wanted to send him down to San Diego. But that would be, outside of putting him back in the lineup, that's the next step for him because you can't just not play him. So it's either play him or send him down to San Diego and get him some playing time down there.
Yeah. So according to Cap Friendly, all praise on high, he is at the moment still waiver exempt, which I thought was definitely the big reason they hadn't done it yet. But DB mentioned it while you were talking, and it was what I was thinking too. Which is, I think at a certain point you have to wonder if he's kind of a Cogliano. Cogliano was drafted to be second center for those Edmonton teams, and he just wasn't that. But they shifted him to the wing in Anaheim, and he became, whether he got the full credit he deserved, like I think he was very definitively a Selke quality player for his defensive ability and his ability to drive play. And I think a lot of us were very frustrated at times with his seemingly inability to finish. But the fact remains, he was a great player for the Ducks. He fit a role, and it allowed him to use his speed and his smarts more effectively. I have a hard time thinking Sam Steele deserves to be a center over Lundestrom, Rico, or Getzlaf. I have no problem with taking out Grant and playing a skilled fourth line. I think that would be fine. But I think it's important that if they're going to keep that line together, then I think you have to look at maybe doing something, take D'Lo out for a game. Look at a Grant Heinen Steele line. Just see what it looks like, Put Steele out there on the wing. See what you can do. I think we talked about this a little bit a couple of weeks, like a week or so ago or whatever, but, there's a logjam on this team at forward and on defense. This is a great opportunity to start moving some of these guys on and trying to get some decent picks, or, a prospect or whatever, and give some of these guys a better chance, and if they don't think Steele's in the future, like, it sucks all things considered, but you may gotta look at Luke moving him, before his value completely tanks and he's seen as a total bust. It's always frustrating to talk about players like that because they're people and, we want the best for them. But I do think there is a unfortunate reality to professional sports that comes into play here. And, I do think we've seen players benefit from moves. I'm not saying to trade him, but I think if you're not going to send him down and you're not going to try and move him to the wing, then I think you need to start, maybe making some phone calls and seeing if anybody does need a center, if that's what you think he is.
Yeah, eventually, there's already a logjam, and that logjam becomes a little bit bigger next year, just with players coming up from the girls. I won't mention his name because you all know who I'm talking about, but he will eventually be a center at the NHL level in Benoit Levigru, and he will come up, and that is another player who'll be competing for a roster spot. And depending who the Ducks take with their pick here, if they take Matthew Beniers out of Michigan, does he walk onto the roster next year? Probably not. He probably plays another year in the NCAA, but then he pulls a Zieglers potentially and becomes a Ducks player the year after that. And if Sam Steele's still here at that point, there's another center who has a lot higher profile than you do, who is vying for a roster spot at that point, right? And by all things considered, Getzlaf and Henrique will be here next year as two centers on this team. And I know Henrique's moved to the wing at times, but he's likely going to play center when he's playing as well as he is now. And it becomes difficult to get Sam Steele in the lineup. And I don't think the organization wants to play him at the wing because I think they value what he does as a centerman and the fact that he wins 56% of his faceoffs. Again.
But wait up, real quick. Here's my point to that. Why does he become less valuable on a faceoff if you move him to the wing?
I don't think he does.
You have to play your center. You know what I mean? Like, play him with a right-handed center, and now what you have is two guys who theoretically are effective in the faceoff dot. You have a lefty out there and a righty out there. And you just go, look, if it's at this spot, you're taking it. If it's at this spot, you're taking it. I do think, and this is a bigger conversation, but I do think it's hard sometimes to tell where we aren't giving the NHL enough credit and where the NHL is cutting itself short as far as tactically. Because I do think when you pull back a little bit and you do try to move into a F3 kind of situation and just look at forwards and look at what they can do, I do think the idea of putting Sam Steele on the wing becomes less offensive or odious just because what you're doing is taking a player that you have that has a skill set that you value and putting them in a position to succeed. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just saying, like, I do think that sometimes this stuff can be galaxy brained, and it's hard to know how much of it is us having just kind of been beaten into submission by NHL teams refusing to embrace any sense of modernity, and how much of it is us not just giving them enough credit to think that they might try something different.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the worst thing to put him on the wing at all either. And I agree with that. And having a guy who can win faceoffs on the wing is a great option to have. And there's a lot of teams out there who kind of utilize that, and where they have two or three guys who have been centers at some point or can win faceoffs at an efficient rate out there on one line, just to kind of have that secondary option if one guy does get thrown out of the faceoff dot. So I don't think putting Sam Steele on the wing is a bad thing. I just don't know which winger he takes out of the lineup at this point. When you look at, there's no way he's displacing Comtois or Raquel. The way Troy Terry's playing, he's not coming out. Trevor Zegras is not getting thrown out of the lineup for Sam Steele. And then, Max Jones, probably not. Jakob Silfverberg, definitely not. So then again, you fall down to the fourth line. And, would I rather have Sam Steele in the lineup over Derek Grant? Yeah. Would I rather have Mo in the lineup over Nick Delorier? Sure. I don't think Nick Delorier is going to come out. He rarely does. And he hasn't been bad. But, if...
Well, he's been fine. He's been exactly what he is.
Yeah. If I could have a fourth line of Steele, Heinen, Milano over Grant, Delorier, and Heinen tonight, I would. I 100% would. I would definitely have a fourth line of those guys. I know Milano's dealing with, I think, post-concussion syndrome. Somebody put that, or post-concussion symptoms, sorry. That somebody put that in the chat earlier. So not sure when he's coming back. He's on the IR right now as well. But even if it was Delorier, Steele, and Heinen, I like that better than Grant, Delorier, and Heinen, and just allowing Sam Steele to play. So, I don't know if he gets in next game, because this was kind of a pretty big high for the Ducks, and the fact that, they stuck with the same lineup 2 games in a row. It feels like a stretch to find a way for him to get back into the lineup. And somebody did mention in the chat that it's only been 3 games and we're talking about trading Sam Steele, and we're speculating a lot of things. But it the reason we're talking about it is because it hasn't happened this year. There hasn't been a time where a young player from the Ducks has been scratched 3 games in a row, and
right. I mean, I don't think this really happened to anybody other than Henrique, right?
Yeah, and he has been scratched 3 games, but potentially he could have been sent down to San Diego if they played this week, but they don't play until Saturday. So there is really no other place to send him other than him being a healthy scratch at this point if he's not going to play. So I don't remember the last time we saw Sam Steele get sent back down to San Diego. It's been a few seasons, I think, since we've seen that, but it might not be the worst thing in the world for him right now. We've seen it work in the past with guys like Troy Terry and Max Jones, and maybe at this point in time, it's just the right move for Sam Steele to build some confidence back up to get him down to San Diego. And God knows the Gulls could use a player like Sam Steele right now, the way they've been playing, and what his experience at the NHL level can do for that team, and that only builds his confidence. So I'm interested to see what kind of is the next steps here for Sam Steele. If it's getting back into the Ducks lineup, if it's going down to San Diego, or if it's kind of sticking in limbo here and being a healthy scratch every game.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The one name that you mentioned, because I think everything you said was right. Like, I don't think Sam Steele deserves to play over Max Jones. So it really is just that fourth line is kind of the spot that I think you can look at. I think the thing that's interesting is what happens if, the team does do something. If they move Raquel, does that give Sam Steele an opportunity to move into the lineup in a different role, or does that go to Backes? You know what I mean? And they move Heinen up in the lineup and bring Backes in to play between D'Lo and Grant or whatever. I think it's a very interesting situation. But I think if the plan isn't to get him in games, they need to send him down, especially now knowing for sure that he's waiver exempt. There's no reason to do this to him. He's not getting better. He's not getting better sitting on the bench, and I don't know that it's doing anything for his confidence to just sit there. So I think, San Diego's a big thing for him, and he's had success down there before. So I don't know why you won't maybe send him down there and give him an extra year. He might just not be done cooking, man. It happens.
Yeah, and even if it's not for the whole year, even if it's just for a few games, see how he does. I don't think that's the end of the world right now. I think that is a better option than for him sitting out, and I completely understand the reason he is sitting out right now. Or at least one of the reasons he's sitting out right now and not in San Diego is because they aren't playing right now, and you can't send him down. So at least keep him up with the team and have him practice with the team. And if a guy gets an injury and you need to throw somebody in there, you can throw Sam Steele in there, and that's fine. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Before we wrap up here, I want to kind of get to one question we had on Twitter from earlier. It's from Tom, referencing the power play. He said, "Why has there been no net front presence on the power play?" I think he was referring specifically to this game. He said it seems that they create little high danger chances for without it. I think for this game in general, they changed the approach to the power play to fit Jamie Drysdale into the lineup. They went with two defensemen, where normally Zieglers is on the right circle. They've got Getzlaf on the far side, and they throw Max Jones in front of the net, and then they kind of have a rotating forward and then the one defenseman. I think when you throw two defensemen into the mix, you've got two guys patrolling the blue line, you've got two guys on the far circles, and you've got kind of one guy usually behind the net or kind of circling around behind the net near the front of the net. So it's really hard to have a net front presence when you're rocking two defensemen. It's not possible. It's been done before. But, Shattenkirk then shifts down to the right circle where Getzlaf is. And then Getzlaf is not really a net front guy, and he starts patrolling behind the net and kind of making passes from there. And then Zieglers sits in his normal spot, and then Drysdale's kind of patrolling the blue line is what we saw in the power play. So I don't think it's anything, at least for now, to read into. I think the Ducks have had success having a net front presence. I think Max Jones is the perfect guy for that. But even when they did have that, it's not like the power play was firing on all cylinders, right? The power play is the worst in the league or one of the worst in the league for a reason. And it doesn't hurt to kind of change things up when you have a new player like Jamie Drysdale come into the lineup, and then maybe changing it this way is something that works. And I think that's what they're trying to do in this game.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any reason not to try new stuff. It's not like, they're clicking, like you said. I do think it's worth pointing out, specifically regarding net front presence, is we have seen Max Jones do that, and we've seen Max Comtois get in there a little bit. But what they seem to have done lately is favored having like Raquel kind of sit a couple feet away from it and be able to just kind of be a goal line up pass option just to get those little snapshots of. But I think if you look at the overtime, they put Getzlaf in front. The Henrique goal, Getzlaf was positioning himself specifically for that play. He was trying to put himself in a position where he was blocking Hill's ability to look to his left while also getting his stick in front of him and in front of Hill to allow him to get him a tip. I think we talked about this a month or so ago, but I really do think moving Getzlaf to the front of the net is a huge thing that Anaheim should really be trying, because one, it puts an elite passer in a position where you don't usually have elite passers. But again, he's 6'4", and he's 230 pounds or whatever. He's a big dude. There's no reason other than in the past he was the best passing option on the team to not put him down there. And now when you have guys like Drysdale and like Zegras and even like Troy Terry who's coming along, and Raquel and Rico and Comtois are still there, I think you should be willing to try more interesting things, do more interesting things, and putting Getzlaf in the front of the net, I think, could be something that could really help generate options for a struggling power play, like he said, and they haven't been good. So I don't think they should be, thumbing their noses up at any idea.
Yeah, I think it's a whole different dynamic having Ryan Getzlaf in front of the net, because it's not the same as Max Jones, where he's blocking out the sun, and if any loose pucks drop, he's got the hands to put the puck in the back of the net. With Ryan Getzlaf, it opens up a new opportunity where you've got Zegras on one circle, and right now it's Shattenkirk, but whoever it is, Terry or whoever on the other circle, where you can feed passes into Ryan Getzlaf in front of the net, and he can draw defensemen in and potentially open up that backdoor pass, and he has the passing ability to make that play. And even if he doesn't make that play, getting the puck down to Ryan Getzlaf in front of the net draws in defenders and gets other guys open. And, he could feed the puck back to Zieglers, who could send it all the way across for a one-timer, and that's in the back of the net. Like I said, he could pass the puck across the crease himself and open up for a chance. And I think it just opens up a bunch of new possibilities for the Ducks on the power play to have him in that spot. Whether they're going to utilize him like that or not remains to be seen. It's only been one game, and he really wasn't a facilitator of down low passes. There weren't a lot of passes that went into him, and it wasn't like that was the focus for the Ducks on the power play. But I would love to see that be something that they explore, because we've seen successful power plays in the past have that guy who, he's a big guy, he's a net front presence, but he's there to receive passes in tight, draw in defenders, and make the play. And, if anybody is kind of perfect for that in this league, even at his age, it's Ryan Getzlaf, because he has...
I think specifically at his age, it's great because it takes a lot of the pressure of having to... Sorry, I don't mean to talk about I'm really sorry, but I think it works so perfectly because it takes the pressure off of him of having to hold the line. You give that to guys with younger legs, and a little bit better skaters. Skating has never been Getzlaf's strong suit, or his best ability by that, But like you said, I just think the opportunities that you create both in spacing out talent across two power play units and in creating a multitude of looks on a power play with a true playmaker at the front of the net is incredible. I think it gives you so many options and so many different ways to be creative that, and they did do it, I think maybe 10 or so games ago. I remember seeing it and it really struck out to me, but I'm pretty sure he scored a goal on a power play from the front of the net or set somebody up or something, but he had a very positive impact for a power play, and it might have just been one of those things where he ends up there based on the way guys are moving around, but there is something there. I think the fact that they did it, even if it is just for that 4-on-3, it does show, that it can work because he's huge and he's skilled.
I think the one thing here that we can all agree on is that hasn't been this level of excitement for the upcoming game than there has been now. I think when you look ahead to Saturday, for I guess it'd be a 5 p.m. start for you guys against the Arizona Coyotes. That's the game that everybody's looking forward to now, just because of the outcome from this game. It's a level of excitement we haven't had for an upcoming game, I think, at all this year. In terms of what we're doing for the podcast that day, we're still ironing out the details if we can go live after Saturday's game. Depends on the availability of everybody for that show. At the very least, it would be potentially another Sunday morning show like we did last Saturday after the post-game show. So if it's not after Saturday's game, it would likely then be a Sunday morning show. We had Dave in the chat ask a bit about some upcoming Patreon shows, so we are planning at least one, if not two, Pucks and Brews for this month. Definitely planning on one for the 28th, which is looking like it could be, just because of the timing, Pucks and Brews that actually is a watch along for that game, just because usually we record Pucks and Brews in the afternoon. It just so happens the Ducks play in the afternoon. We usually record on Sundays, so it kind of works pretty well with what we're going to do for that. So anybody who is a Patreon member or wants to be in on that show and wants to join the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/forevermighty and check out some of the bonus content we have there. But like I said, we are planning on doing a show after the Arizona game on Saturday, just to stay tuned on whether that's going to be a post-game show after the game on Saturday or for Sunday morning for everybody that wants to come out live. Again, we love that you guys came out and supported us tonight. We are more than happy with the outcome of this game and the step forward for some of these young guys. And we'll see you guys all out there after the Coyotes game on this weekend.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night.